All right, we're here. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Pure Presence Book Study Group. And this month, we're actually this year. This is practically a year study in the Perfume of Silence because we've extended it to do two chapters a month. Where prior books we've looked at, a chapter a week. And we're looking at the Perfume of Silence. And if you looked at your notification, next week we won't be looking at chapter 4. We'll be we'll be sitting with Francis Lucille himself, and he'll be taking questions. If you know Francis, we don't really, he's not coming to be interviewed. We're going to bring questions. So please take the time, and Rupert's suggestion, or at least the way he approached Francis Lucille, was he would spend weeks formulating a question for Francis. So if you have real questions for Francis, he'll be with us next week for our book study. And it's a real treat that he will do that. And it sort of goes along with this week's chapter. Just say yes. Well, he just said yes. I asked him, and he said yes. He will be here. He has a couple of things that he said. Well, Bill, be sure and remind me with this text. And he gave me his phone number to text him to remind him to be here with us next week. But we're just really blessed and honored to be joined by Francis Lucille himself next week. And we are just grateful for that. And we're grateful for all of you to join with us this week. Thank you for joining us on this journey of awakening and awareness and the wisdom of one of the I would say one of the master, or one of the sages of our time, not from India, from France, but living in the U.S. He lives on the West Coast, and we're just blessed to go through the content of Francis Lucille and to be co-hosted with Jenny Beal, whom I think is just an amazing sage herself in a white woman's body over there. And thank you for being here, Jenny. I just really appreciate your involvement and your saying yes to be co-host on this book study with us.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's lovely to be here with all of you. So, hi, everyone.
Yeah. And we're looking this week at chapter 3. As I said, just say yes, and inside, of course, just have a willingness to not know, have a willingness to be available for the yes is what I get from the title. Of course, there's much more in it than just that statement. And for all of you that came in just a little bit late, in the title of the notification today, Francis Lucille will be live with us next week. We won't be looking at chapter 4. We'll be asking questions from the author, and so be ready for that. I'm sure we'll have a nice crowd, because I'll send it out to my mailing list and let them know as well. We'll probably, and there's about 260 plus people that are registered for this study. Many people watch the replay and come that way because they're working or sleeping. But as we look at this chapter 3, we may look at more than just half of it. It's only 6 pages, but it's a lot of content for these 6 pages. And if you have any questions, we'll open it up for questions in about 30 minutes. Raise your hand or type your question in the chat, and we'll cover it that way. And we're on page 39 in the book. What page are we on in the Kindle? Do you know, Jenny?
Yes, it's page 35 on Kindle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the very first question of this page, on page 39, it says, is there any place for devotion in this teaching of non-duality? I think that's a very potent question. I think it's a beautiful question. What do you think about it, Jenny?
Yes, well, Francis says yes, but he defines devotion really quite carefully. He says that there's a place for devotion, but it's not devotion towards an object. He says the kind of devotion that is the foundation for the search for truth is very pure. It's not tainted by images, by objectivity. It's so pure that in the beginning it's not recognized for what it is. It looks like profound interest and is both passionate and dispassionate at the same time. Passionate because there's a lot of energy that's devoted to it, and dispassionate because there's no agitation. And really, when we first come to this teaching, often we are devoted towards a teacher and the teaching, and even that really needs to be surrendered, to be given up at some point. We're so excited about what we discover, but we need to allow the devotion to turn back and sink back into its source in awareness. And Francis spoke on a recent satsang about the importance of recognizing that sages, all the famous sages of the past, are not special people. They're not different from any of us. They don't have any special attributes. They're very ordinary, and they make mistakes. And he said the problem is that we put them on a pedestal, and after they die, the pedestal increases in height by 1 inch each year. It's quite funny.
That's funny. That is funny. Oh, you know what? I did forget to go on YouTube Live. We usually do go YouTube Live with this broadcast.
Do you want to just do that then, Bill? Or?
Yeah, I think I'll go because it will allow me to make it available immediately after the broadcast. So I'll put us on YouTube Live. I was thinking that I sometimes forget what I'm doing because I do so many different broadcasts. And we'll just go live on YouTube. There we go. All right. Thanks for pausing for that. And I will just take this little first part. I'll somehow snip it together so that we have a full broadcast there. All right. On YouTube. There we go. Okay. We're good. I think that's funny that that idea that we raise the stages up by an inch at a time. One of the interesting things that I really enjoyed about meeting Rupert for the first time was that he was so normal. I was just because I came from years of following Mooji, and he's the guru. Experience. And when I met Rupert, I thought, wow, the guy just walks out of the room with the rest of us and walks out barefoot. He doesn't need anybody to, we don't have to stand up and, any of that. It's just it's like normal guy. So I really appreciate the simplicity of the messenger of Rupert and Francis Lucille, although I also still absolutely love Mooji, and I have a friendship with him that is not it doesn't require that I idolize him, although that is the way he shows up. But
Yes. Yeah.
I come from a Christian background, and I did come from the idea of idolizing the image of Jesus and the teachings of that Christian idolatry, and that he was the, at one time I thought he was the only Son of God, not realizing that he's just like all the rest of us. In fact, I mean, there's no difference except that he somehow seemingly awakened prior to this body mind experience, and points he was always pointing us to the same truth that Francis and Rupert and Ramana Maharshi and Yogananda and all the great sages. Jesus was pointing to the same truth. It just got a little diverted over to Catholicism a little bit, and idolatry, and the male masculine enforcement of what the first pope was sort of directing the agenda to. But I really appreciate. I love devotion. I love Francis's description here that, we're devoted to the self. We're devoted to the awakened being that is one. That and it's a palpable experience of devotion to presence. It's a palpable experience of devotion to an understanding, even.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a devotion to truth, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why when someone is like, will be on it, we'll have Francis in person next week, and of course we honor him, we respect him, and yeah, I put him on a pedestal. To be honest, I put him on a pedestal, but not more than Jesus or Ramana Maharshi, or it's because they bring an embodiment of the message in such a clear way that I honor that. I respect it, and I really love that the truth flows from their embodiment in such a beautiful and an open and communicative way that we can sense it and also embody it in our own experience.
Yes, and Francis, as I hope people will discover next week, is full of fun and full of jokes, and it's very natural. It's like a conversation with a friend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For me, when I first met Francis, because I'm the organizer of the conferences, and I'm, you have to get used to his like, you have to get used to this stone face personality at first, because he's waiting for the question, and I'm trying to engage a little bit, and there's like nothing there. So you have to get past that, and then once you get past that, that is the experience that I've found. It's just like communicating with a friend.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So in devotion, where would you where would you go with this question from here, Jenny?
Um, I think, I mean, for me, devotion, there isn't really any difference between devotion and simply enjoyment of one's own being, just a relaxation into one's own being. Rupert, once I asked Rupert about devotion, and he said, and devotion is always going to be towards an object. Just allow devotion to flow back into its source, and its source is love. And I think that's exactly what Francis is meaning here as well. And so when you see it that way, there isn't any difference between that and meditation or abiding as awareness, or whatever one likes to call it, abiding as one's true self. All of those are just the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and the experience, I like the last sentence, or the last two sentences in this first piece, because this seems to be my own experience is, gradually as we come nearer the mark, we understand that the ultimate spiritual object, truth, freedom, happiness, love, is not an object. And in fact, it is the experience that is the witness that is aware of the experience.
Yes. Rick has just asked a question. Well, what about this? What does Francis mean when he says that pure devotion in the beginning is not recognized for what it is? Is it due to the lack of objectivity? I think he says it's interest. It manifests as interest, and certainly that was my experience when I first came to this the non-dual teaching. It was just mind-blowing, and I was watching all of Rupert's YouTube clips. I was reading all of his books. I was reading Atmanand. I was reading loads and loads of stuff, and I was spending most of my day just reading and listening and studying. I had an old computer at the time, and because I was watching so many videos, it was too much for the video card, and it burnt out, and couldn't get another one that fitted the same computer, so I needed a new computer. And then I burnt out my iPod listening to the meditations. It was a very crazy time, but it was manifesting as a kind of extreme and crazy interest. But then after a while, after about 6 months, when that's all I was doing, wasn't even looking at the news or anything. Everything was focused towards that, exploring these ideas. But then things sort of settled down a little bit, and it just became a deep love and a deep, just a deep love. Yeah.
Well, and thank you for that. And it's also the pure devotion is answered, Rick. I think is answered in that gradual understanding. Pure devotion just sort of is the self-realization experience. It's where we're very content just to do nothing, and to realize that everything is happening in the nothing experience, and that devotion. I think that right here, this experience that we're having right now is a sort of a devotion. It's a devotion to something that is that has a high level of pull for each of us to in this satsang experience, to discuss truth, to discuss the essence of being as it's related to these questions, and then having someone like Francis to answer them. So I thanks for that question. That's always, you seem to always come up with these great questions, Rick.
Yes, I think it's like an exciting novel that you just cannot put down.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And also, he's such a brilliant, he's just such a right there. Uh, Francis Francis is a little faster than Rupert. But Rupert comes in. And he's a little bit of a starting slower start, but much longer and more and just as direct uh, pointing. The next question on page 40 is: can the desire for happiness ever be an obstacle? And I well, what Francis says is the desire for happiness comes from happiness and leads to it. However, the desire for happiness state is an obstacle. And I think you were sort of implying that we first started this, uh, when we first started, you were talking about um, that, that, uh, that we start off on our journey with with our devotion being uh, or an idol, having idolizing a teacher even. And I think happiness, we're all looking for happiness. We're looking for it in the teacher initially. We're looking for it in the book that we buy, the title of the book. Oh, that's what I need. That'll make me happy. If I understand that, I'll be happy. And initially, it is a pull that we think will bring us to a place that will make us happy, and sometimes it does. And when we read the content of Rupert's books or Francis or some other uh, spiritual idea, often that understanding does make us happy because it gives us more of clarity of our own identity.
Yes, I think for me the way the way this manifests, and it's a trap. There is a trap of happiness. It's called in Sanskrit Anandamaya Kosha, and it it happens when you have a very clear, almost overwhelming glimpse of your true nature, which lasts a while, and then you just want to keep going back there. It fades, but you want to get back to it, and what you're doing is trying to get back to a state of the mind, and also a state of the body, because in that state of bliss, the body feels so relaxed and happy, and everything's joyful, and you're wanting to get back to that. And that was a trap I fell into in quite a big way early on, because I'd had sort of 3 months of utter bliss. And I was convinced, well, it happened once, it must be possible for it to happen again. And it took quite a lot of persuasion from Rupert. In fact, wasn't going to Francis's meetings then, to explain to me that no, that isn't what you're looking for. That what you're looking for isn't this sort of cloud nine type bliss all the time. It's not. It's not like that. And it was interesting. He described it as a free sample. That sometimes we're given these glimpses as a free sample, but then we have to do the inquiry, and then we have to really find and discover for ourselves that our true nature is happiness, and the real happiness that we are has always been with us, and has never left us and never could leave us. So there can be no desire to go back to that kind of a state, but it can be. Certainly, I found it quite hard to understand that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the initial false, it's a sort of a false happiness is the carrot. that draws us in, and it's the search for happiness that Rupert refers to in the nature of consciousness in that last chapter 18, where he and Bernardo Kastrup did their tour through Amsterdam. And he explained that everyone is in search of happiness. Well, all of us, whether it's with relationships or a spiritual search or money or whatever, we're all looking for happiness. It could be drugs or sex or whatever. We're all looking for that innate happiness that we are. We're thinking it is going to show up with some kind of objective experience. And that is the carrot that sort of draws us, thinking that this will make me happy. And when we find it, some people I've heard that are on the spiritual path say that this quiet presence is a little bit boring. It seems to be a little boring. Until you realize that, oh my God, until you have that visceral connection of presence that you realize is what you are. And then it's not boring at all. Everything is happening within the space of what you are.
Yes, yes. And yes, you see, the objects, we attribute happiness to objects because when we acquire an object, then that desire for the object just vanishes, just evaporates. And it's real happiness, but we've attributed it to an object, and that's really the problem. It's attributing it to an object, and in the case of a glimpse of our true nature, then we attribute it to the state of our minds, a very quiet, peaceful state of mind, and a very happy, relaxed state of the body. But those are both objects. And yes, as you say, happiness is there if there's agitation, if there's anger, if there's sadness, just as much as if there's joy and fun and laughter.
Yeah, yeah. Or we attribute it to a teacher. Sometimes we'll take the message and we'll say, "Oh, it's the teacher that's making me happy," and that's where we put them on that pedestal.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Are there any questions on the board? I don't see any new ones. I see Rick is busy typing away. You must be a fast typer, Rick.
Yes.
Yeah, you must be a fast typer, man. On page 41, there's a second paragraph. It says, once we have understood that there is no experiential or rational evidence for the belief that consciousness is personal, we become naturally open to the possibility that it is impersonal and universal. We become open to the possibility that the consciousness that is seeing and understanding these words right now is the same consciousness that is experiencing everything that is being experienced by all sentient beings at this very moment. And this comes from the question, if one can avoid devoting oneself to objects through the devotion to truth, to God, is it possible to see others as godlike and see yourself in that other person as God? And this, to me, is available, is what awareness is all about. Is the experience of awareness as being the same awareness that everything rises in, and it can't be some kind of a different awareness. Someone else has a different awareness than your awareness, or and actually there's no someone else when you come to the essence of what we're speaking about. Awareness just is, and everything rises in that. Awareness just is, and all of these seeming different objects that are filling this screen on our computers, these objects of experience that have different names, Richard and Ada and Milena and Joel, everyone is just rising within the same awareness, and the awareness of this experience is all the same awareness.
Yes, yes.
There are not separate awarenesses. It's the impersonal and universal self of consciousness that is
And it's
being
very
aware.
important.
Pardon me?
It's very important not to conceptualize awareness as an object. To feel that when we say the word awareness, what we are talking about is myself, the subject of experience, and not an object.
Yes. Yeah. Is there anything else that you would point out on 41, Jenny?
I think maybe go on to the next question. How does devotion to the truth develop in everyday life? That's on, for Kindle users, that's on Kindle page 36, page 41 in the printed book. And he talks about the gradual realizing that happiness doesn't lie in objects, and then getting a glimpse of our true nature, and then that becoming the whole focus of our love and interest, really, like we were talking about earlier. He says something interesting, which is sort of later on in the answer. Our interests in life are gradually consumed in this great fire of interest in our true nature. And as a result, our previous interests fall away. They are outshone. Seeking comes to an end, and true devotion takes birth. So I found that happened initially as really, as I explained, it was this interesting, incredible, overwhelming fascination, like not being able to put down the novel. But later on, once I felt more established as awareness, I found my previous interests coming back, but in a different way. So I'd always loved music and walking out in nature, bird watching, going to the theatre, going to concerts, things like that. Somehow, all of those activities are just as relevant, and I love them just as much as I ever did. For a while, they had taken a back seat, but they came back for me, right back into the fore, and it wasn't that they were outshone. It was more that the light of presence shines through all of those experiences and all of those activities. I mean, the light of presence doesn't go away when I go and practice the piano. It's there. It's there through the sound, through my fingers, through the music. I found that a bit strange, the way he put it there.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is interesting. I'll bet more than a few of us could say that same experience has been found, because our focus goes so intently into understanding the content that we just don't want anything else. We don't want anything to get in the way of that understanding. It becomes such a pull, at least it did for me, I didn't want anything to do with anything else that was going to distract me from the focus. And then when I realized that awareness, everything is the space of what I'd been seeking for. It was like the fish that was looking for the water. I realized, oh my God, it's everywhere. And it's so beautiful because, when I was a born again Christian for a while before I found the Course in Miracles, and it seems like each of those things, as soon as I realized, oh, this isn't right. This is a trap, or this is a trap, or this is limited, or I would keep looking for the next thing until I realized until I guess realization was understood. Now I go back and I read the words of the Bible, and I things kind of show up. Okay, that's true. That was the true message. That was off. Or even A Course in Miracles, I look at the Course, I go back and I read it differently because I realize it's has quite a bit of dualistic language in it, and I can say, okay, that was that was like Francis speaks to in, I think, one of the last few pages of this chapter, where he talks about stirring the fire with the stick, and then throwing and then using it to stir the fire, and then throwing the stick in the fire because you're done with it. And I think those are all just progressive sticks that we use along the way until we throw the stick in the fire and it's gone.
Yes, I think Susan's made a comment which I think is absolutely perfect and certainly describes my experience. She says, those things can be enjoyed again now they are divested of the belief that they would make me happy.
There it is.
That's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, that says it all right there. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. Rick said, let's see, I saw something from Arthur. Once I understood deeply, I can't know knowing things began. I can't know knowing things began to relax. Yeah. And then Rick said, isn't that same spiritual impulse or pull at work right now? The reason we all elected to be here now within this webcast? I think, I think it's, for me, I just have such a love of truth. I have such a love of satsang. And also it does, there is a love for joining and sharing these ideas, interacting with a heart and a love for truth. There is an interaction there. I wouldn't call it. For me, I wouldn't call it an impulse. It's sort of an inspiration that I've been doing this for 3 years now. I don't know when it's. I thought that would be fun to do. Wouldn't that be fun to do? And it certainly is. I love every time we join together to speak about these things, and we have this awesome vehicle to these different books of these amazing teachers to reference and sort of bring out this excitement, this inspiration we have for truth.
Yes.
I'm looking at page 42. There was a great question that I highlighted that says, or a comment, there seems to be a basic duality in the universe between myself and others. Do I discover unity by looking inward or outward? I thought his answer here was awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. because you know, it's just so potent what he says here. You could go either way, but the easiest way is to go inwards.
Yes,
When
and especially to start with, to go inwards. Yeah.
Yeah, well, this takes you back to some, you know, what Jesus said 2,000 years ago when he was one of his disciples said, "Where's the kingdom of heaven? I want the kingdom of heaven." And he says, "The kingdom of heaven is within," and that's where you go. I mean, if you go within, and that's the easiest because it takes you to to yourself.
Yes, yes. And I like the way he really disentangles this question by saying if you're thinking in terms of myself and others, then really you're imagining yourself to be a body or a mind. And that's really the starting point is to see that you're not a body or a mind. Both of those are objects, and you are that which is aware of those objects. You are the subject of experience. And then he goes on to say, well, from there, having understood that you are the subject of experience, which is really, it's not a difficult thing to understand, I don't think. I think we all have a natural feeling of that. But then what's a little more tricky is to see that there's only one subject of experience. So nowadays he sometimes expresses that as there is only one reality, only one subject of experience. And there's a number of approaches you can use for seeing whether there's only one subject of experience. You can use a process of logic, which is the way he really starts here, and really asking what evidence we have that there is more than one subject, and we find that we don't have evidence, and we look harder for evidence, and the way I always imagined that process would be like a lawyer in court. He's got to find evidence that the guy did the murder. So he's looking everywhere for evidence. He's trying very, very hard to find all the evidence and marshal all the evidence that maybe the guy's innocent, and he's innocent, then he won't find any evidence. So we look hard in the same way that a lawyer will look hard for evidence that there's more than one subject of experience. And then when we are feeling a bit more confident that we're not getting very far finding such evidence, then we, instead of continuing looking for evidence, we just say, well, why don't I live my life on that basis? How would that be? What difference would it make? And we just try it as an experiment, and we can try that with all the people we meet, just seeing that as one subject of experience, it's the same subject of experience. It's the same awareness that is experiencing the world through a different pair of eyes, but the same eye seeing the world, and just seeing how that changes your interaction with people.
Yeah. And your interaction with people, and it also changes your experience often.
Yes.
because for me, just abiding or resting in the awareness of the experience, I'm not so involved in the object of experience emotionally, or even psychologically. I'm not so attached to a belief system based on some kind of idea that I had about what's being talked about, the experience that's being manifest. It's an unattached experience that is also having the experience at the same time. It makes life a whole different experience.
It does, and you feel that when you're with someone, so you're both experiencing the same conversation, but that conversation is not a back and forth. That conversation is being witnessed by one eye. It doesn't belong to either two different parties, as it were, two different subjects. There is just one thing happening as one reality right now.
Yeah.
And that does create a very different feeling. So a conversation becomes more like a dancing together.
Yeah. And you're not so prone to really step on your feet while you're dancing by getting by getting
Exactly,
too
yes.
involved in the experience that other people are having, being too involved in somebody else's opinion or point of view or your own, stepping on your own feet while you're dancing. And Rick has a question here on page 42. Do I discover unity by looking inward or outward? So uh, I think that's a great question. I mean, that's actually the question from the chapter. I mean, from this paragraph. Francis implies that either are adequate, but the inward is easier. Can you elaborate? Okay, that's what we've been doing.
Yes, I think the reason inward is easier is if we go outwards, then what that implies is looking outwards towards objects of experience, and we could do that, and particularly if we're scientists and we've got a science background, then we can do that, and that's fun. And if we go far enough, then we see that ultimately everything vanishes into nothingness. There's a beautiful book called a very short introduction to nothing. It's written by a particle physicist, and it's beautiful because what it shows in the end is that there's no reason why the net mass of the universe should be anything other than zero, which is a most astonishing conclusion. And so we see, as Francis often describes in his satsang, you can see the universe in a sense as waves, particles coming in and out of existence, waves of potential. You've got the like the idea of a pendulum. You've got potential energy. If you hold up the weight of a pendulum, it's got potential energy, because if you released it, it would have dynamic energy, because it would fall down and it would swing. And right at the bottom of the swing, then you get the maximum dynamic energy. So you've got those kind of waves happening all the time, and that's very beautiful. And you can, in a way, you can end up in more or less the same place. That was the route I was going along before I came across the Rupert and the Direct Path, and I used to read a lot about that and a lot about neuroscience also. So I think that it is a route to discovery, but I don't think it's for everyone, and it's not necessarily very easy. It needs a little bit of maths, ideally.
When I look at the this, do you either go looking inward or outward? I go back to the neti neti. When I first came across the neti neti, I'm not this, I'm not that. It established a position that wasn't so close to the object of experience. And then it was when I met Rupert that, including that we then go back out and include all of the objects of experience and realize that that's not that's also the inward. So they're not separate from each other.
Exactly. Ultimately, you end up in a circle. You know those diagrams of the snake swallowing its own tail, the Ouroboros, I think it's called, and it's like that, really. And ultimately, there is no inside and no outside. So the idea of one path or the other really stops making sense. Ultimately,
Yeah, and we live then we're living we're living as presence, as awareness, consciously, or knowingly, actually knowingly, as presence, and allowing. And that's why the title of this chapter is it's an allowing, or it's a, even putting a word allowing on it is a concession to just being.
yes, yeah,
Being the yes.
yes, exactly. That's perfect, isn't
Yeah, yeah.
it?
And as we look on, it says, so going from, it says, once we've understood, okay, so he says, once we've understood that the true I, this is on page 42, is that in which the body, the mind, and the world appear, we can then question the true nature of this I, the subject. For instance, ask yourself, are there two subjects? This is, yeah, are there two subjects here? No, there's still only one subject, right? If the answer is yes, then we have to ask ourselves, what is the foundation for such a claim? We experience ourselves as one single subject, not two. What is the reality of the experience? We have a concept that there are as many subjects as there are bodies, but this is simply a belief. There is nothing to substantiate it. We have inherited this belief from our conditioning. Why create many subjects if we actually only ever experience one? This does not prove or establish the fact that there is only one subject. However, why believe that there are several subjects if this claim is without foundation? If we take the understanding that is closest to our actual experience, that there is only one subject, everything suddenly falls into place. Life itself becomes miraculous.
Yes, and Rachna quotes this lovely saying from Rumi. I can't find it on the chat now, but I can remember it. True lovers never really meet. They are in each other all along.
Yes.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I like that. That reminds me of what Rupert points to when he says that initially, when two people fall in love, it's it's their it's not that they're falling in love with someone else, but they're falling in love with with themselves, because there's no judgment. There's no separate self involved. So they're really falling in love with themselves as the self.
Yes, and falling in love with love itself.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah. And there
it's
just happens to be a beautiful woman or a beautiful man or beautiful other woman or man there, and it's really the essence of it's that connectedness that you fall in love with, of your own being.
yes, yes. And then you can find exactly the same without the beautiful woman or the wonderful
Yes.
man.
It says there's a comment from Catherine. That is it, Rachma. What does that mean?
It was just he's just referring back to the Rachna mentioned the that Rumi quote. Rachna has also produced a beautiful book of
Okay.
poems called "Fall in Love with Me," and those who are on in my Facebook group, they'll see that a little while ago I put a link to a video with where I talk to Rachna and she reads some of her poems.
Oh, okay. Thank
So
you.
um,
Thank you, Rachna. I'd missed that was your name. Sorry about that. So we're just about the end of our time. If we have one more comment, or if there's a question, do we have another comment that we want to cover in the book? I think we have a little bit of time.
I think the important thing in the point in the rest of the book is really about not knowing and living in not knowing. Um, and he says, so the question is, so we shouldn't take up any position. If we take up a position, a belief, then that's never going to be truth. That's never going to be reality. Ultimately, all we can say is, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Or you can say you, you can inquire. What is it that this would want to show me, and just be open to being open.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Jean Klein says, be open to the openness.
yeah,
Lovely.
yeah. Because then there's not a resistance, there's not a barrier to something uh, being inspired or presenting itself, and I find that amazing things happen when you just don't have an agenda, or when you're just open to being uh, you're open to another point of view, you're open to being wrong, you're not fixed on an idea, and there's a place for something new and fresh and beautiful to flow into that.
Yes, but also to see that whatever does flow in is only going to be a model of reality. It's never going to be reality itself. He says we use this inquiry to undermine all belief systems, all attachment to concepts of any kind. And this leaves us in the absence of any position in not knowing. And that's really important, because it's very easy to get attached to the philosophy of non-duality, and to the ideas of this teaching, to the models that are used within the teaching. But none of those are truth. They're just models to help us find our way there. That's their only purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Elizabeth said, could you use this call as an example of only one subject?
Well, of course, we have many body minds displayed on the screen, but there's only one experience happening, and we're all experiencing it.
Yeah. There's only one awareness. I have to keep bringing it back to awareness, because there's no objects in awareness, and I bring it to that, and that every seeming separate everyone here is the same awareness. We can't have a separate awareness. That's our oneness in my mind.
Yes. Yeah.
It's our shared oneness. Well, we're a little bit past our the top of the hour, and we're finished for the day for this chapter 3. And next week we're going to have Francis with us, and everyone just prepare for him to be the entire hour. Actually, it may go a little more. I'll talk to him to see if we can go 75 minutes if there's a lot of questions. Or it will just be an hour, but we'll meet next week with Francis Lucille, and he has agreed to be here with us, and I'm so looking forward to that. And thank you all for joining with us today. Thank you, Jenny, for your comments, and thank you everyone that commented and had great questions and comments on the board. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely to see you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.